Good morning and welcome to Island Outlook, a presentation of Connoisseur Media, Long Island. I'm Donna Vaughn. There's not a homeowner on Long Island who doesn't think their property tax bill is too high. While death and taxes continue to be the two things in life we can all be certain of, it is possible to do something about the property taxes you pay by filing a tax grievance. You can even do it yourself, although having an expert on your side may not hurt either. A couple of experts are here with us today to explain the tax grievance process. Peter Cohen and Laurie are the owners of ZapMyTax and ZapMyInsurance. Glad to have you here today.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
You're here, of course, today to talk about an issue of interest to pretty much every Long Island homeowner. How can we possibly lower our property taxes? There's a process called a property tax grievance that can accomplish this, and you're going to take us through that process today. Why don't we start with an explanation of what is a property tax grievance exactly?
A property tax grievance is a process where we file a formal complaint with the assessor or the Board of Assessment Review to complain about the property tax assessment that's been placed on your home. That assessment is times a tax rate which equals your property taxes. So the lower your assessment, the lower your property taxes. Sometimes your assessment can be very high or it can be correct. We have found in our 30 years of experience that most often the assessments are too high and that they can be challenged and reduced, therefore lowering your property taxes.
The thing about living on Long Island is that every time you turn around, there is a tax, and there's taxes for all sorts of things. Just to be clear, when we talk about property taxes, can you explain which taxes we're talking about exactly and maybe what's not included?
Boy, that's a great question. A lot of people don't understand. There are many different line items on everyone's tax bill. For instance, there's school, library, police, fire, roads, lighting, sewer in some areas, special districts, and there's many other lines. Each one of those items has an assessment, and it's times a tax rate for that particular item. When you add them all up, you get your total tax bill. So when we reduce someone's assessment to a lower number, all of the items are affected, both the school, town, general portions of your bill, police, fire, any line item on your bill is reduced. In some areas, garbage is a set fee per home, and that's not affected.
Does the tax grievance process work any differently here in New York than it might in, say, another state?
Many of the states have pretty much the same procedure no matter where you go, and most states have a methodology for challenging your assessment. Thankfully, in New York State, you can challenge your assessment fairly easily. In other states, some places you need an attorney, and some places it can only be done once every couple of years or every 10 years, so you can't miss that opportunity. In New York, you could do it every year.
And you don't need an attorney or any special sort of expertise to do it.
You don't need an attorney or any sort of special expertise. Homeowners can file on your own, and many of them do. Unfortunately, I don't feel that homeowners get the same treatment by the assessor or the government than they would when they file with somebody who's a professional in that field. There's a lot of different things to know about your assessment and what goes into the value of your home as compared to other homes in your neighborhood.
We mentioned earlier that the tax grievance process is fairly similar between New York and other states. What about if you live in Nassau or in Suffolk, or if you live in a village or a hamlet? Is it different depending on what kind of municipality you live in?
Generally, the municipalities have to treat us all the same. We file a formal grievance, and that grievance must be heard by a Board of Assessment Review or a board that is set up to listen to your grievance and understand your assessment and if the valuation is correct, no matter which township you live in New York State, or whether it's a village or whether it's a city. There are slightly different procedures, but basically the big difference is how the board treats their grievances. Some areas are very overassessed and there's a lot of grievances, and some areas are somewhat overassessed and there aren't as many. But no matter where you live, we have found that the assessors are not very happy that people file a grievance. And most often, they do not give you a reduction at what we call the board level of grievance, which is where you actually submit your grievance to the board, and they actually are supposed to review. Unfortunately, most of the times, the boards deny your request for a lower assessment. Fortunately, in Nassau County, there's a different procedure now where there is a board and there is an assessment department that will listen to your grievance, and they will give you a reduction if it's warranted. But most other areas, they deny your grievance and you must file an appeal.
I'm wondering if anyone else can grieve taxes besides a homeowner. For example, what about a tenant who's required to pay property taxes as per a rental agreement?
If your lease stipulates that you're paying the property taxes, you can file for a grievance. Actually, anyone can file for the grievance portion of it. But unfortunately, because, as I said prior, that the assessors deny you, when you need to file the appeal, then it's New York State courts that take over. And then the rules aren't so easy. So you need to be the owner of a 1, 2, or 3 family home to file a formal grievance. Otherwise, it becomes a commercial property.
Do you have to live in the house?
You don't have to live in the house, but the home cannot be rented for profit. For instance, we have many clients who may rent their homes to a family member or let a family member live there for no fee. Those homes are capable of filing for a grievance, and we have many people who have summer homes. They are also capable of filing for grievance. So sometimes a home can be owned and vacant and not lived in, and those are also able to be filed.
For anyone who's new to the process of grieving taxes, I'm sure one of their first questions is this going to cost me anything?
In all actuality, our services are for free. If your taxes are $10,000 and we lower them to $9,000, our fee can range from 40 to 50% of your first year's savings. So in that instance, our fee would be either $400 and $500 once. Your tax reduction would stay permanent and you'd be paying less all through the future.
So the short answer is no, it doesn't cost you anything up front to grieve your taxes, whether you use a third party out like yourself or not. Some people may assume that a property tax grievance is time consuming and means a lot of filling out papers and having to go to appointments. Is that true?
Yes, there is a lot of paperwork that can be done for each grievance. For each grievance that we file, there's a 4-page New York State form that we fill out, and then there's a 5th page that we attach, which is comprised of comparable sales in your area that are most similar to your home. Most people are under misconception. If your neighbor is paying less taxes than you, it does not mean that you are paying too much. It is not gone from how much does your neighbor pays to how much do I pay. It is what is your assessed value of your home compared to the comparable sales in your area. That would be homes that are most similar to yours.
Despite the fact that it could cost you some time to file this property tax grievance, you actually will do a lot of that work when someone hires you. You've also actually done a study that kind of proves that it's worth the time of a homeowner to go through the process, right?
Yes. We've done a very in-depth study recently, actually just this October, on all the different school districts in Nassau County, and we've included some of them in Suffolk County. And the conclusions were, we were absolutely astounded. We knew that when people filed for a reduction, that they were paying less in property taxes when they actually won. But we didn't know that when people filed year after year in Nassau County for 5 years in a row, they were paying sometimes 25 and 30% less than neighbors who never filed. So that's a huge difference. And additionally, what the study revealed was people who paid taxes in 2011, now it's 2015 and 16, and they could be paying less today than they paid in 2011, while their neighbors are paying more. Basically, what the study revealed is that if you don't file for a grievance, you're paying for your neighbors who did file a grievance. Their taxes go down, and the budget shortfalls that the government needs to make up has to go on to your tax rate, and everybody then pays more. So your taxes will now go up, and your neighbor's taxes will go down.
Interesting. Well, some people have told you that they're afraid perhaps they'll wind up seeing their taxes go higher if they file a grievance. Is this a legitimate fear?
It's really not a legitimate fear. In my 30 years, I have never seen a single home have taxes that were raised because they filed a grievance. The assessor is not allowed to seek revenge on a particular homeowner for filing a grievance.
Your company is called ZapMyTax, and that is, of course, what you do. You help people file property tax grievances. As we said earlier, though, you don't have to go to a third party. You could do it yourself. Why not file a tax grievance ourselves rather than go to a third party? What are some of the benefits?
It's a little unfortunate to say, but we have found that homeowners who file on their own don't get quite the same treatment that we get. It's almost like buying in bulk. In some instances, the difference can be really, really huge in treatment in the courtroom, treatment from the assessor, and there are ratios and values that come into play when you're trying to value a home. And what we have found that with having the expertise that we have, we know how to combat and we know how to discuss those proper ratios and values with the assessor, where a homeowner, even a homeowner who might be a lawyer or a homeowner who might be involved in real estate or have a real estate license, or someone who maybe owns a few homes that they rent out and they're a landlord, they would not have this knowledge of how to combat what's called a residential assessment ratio, an equalization ratio, and within the different classes of homes, in order to properly discuss the valuations. I have seen situations where there are two very similar homes, both applying for reduction, one represented by a homeowner and one represented by us. And the difference is almost every time when we get the reduction, it's usually larger than the homeowner would get on their own. It's really unfortunate to say, but I don't feel that homeowners get a fair treatment.
We're speaking this morning with Peter Cohen and Laurie Fay from ZapMyTax, and they're explaining how a property tax grievance works and how it can save us some money. What I'd like to do actually at this point is take us through the grievance process step by step. Tell us how it begins.
Well, the first thing we do is the client will sign an application. We'll take that application in-house and verify all of their information, make sure the home is eligible for a property tax grievance. It has to be classified as a 210. There's a few other things we like to make sure.
What did you mean by that, classified as a 210?
A one or a two-family home, not rented for profit by others. Then we file the first document, which is a 524. As Peter said before, it's a 4-page document. Lots of little information goes in there, equalization rate, the RAR, the property, the PAR ID, anything that a homeowner can pretty much find online, but we have access to it immediately. We present those documents to the board, at which point in Nassau County we're dealing with those grievances and we are able to negotiate reductions at that level. In Suffolk County, most of the times those documents are looked over. Unfortunately, they do not have the capacity to deal with them at such a bulk level. They are denied. And then we begin to prepare our appeals, at which point we file a 730, which is another 4-page document filled with information about the property and the comparable sales. And then we purchase a New York State SCAR appeal, which is an AR number.
May I just interrupt? That's a
Sure.
Small Claims Assessment Review, SCAR.
SCAR. And then the grievances get called to court one at a time. And we actually sit in a room and we negotiate 50, 60 at a time. Can take anywhere from 3 to 6 hours in court.
Wow.
We usually have about 4 people in the room, a hearing officer, a judge. And we come to a determination of value. And it's a back and forth. It's a negotiation. And we pride ourselves on having the best defense for our clients. So Peter has written our proprietary software. He gathers all the data, along with a few other programmers, to make sure that our team of appraisers, which we have 2 licensed appraisers on staff, in addition to a group of other assistants and assistant appraisers, and we sit there and we hash it out, and it can get rough and it's exhausting, but we like to walk out of that room knowing that we got our clients the reduction they deserve. And I would say 9 out of 10 times we're happy with what we've done. There are limits at that level, so sometimes we need to call our client and say, we had a limit, we couldn't go any further this year. However, file next year and we'll get you a further reduction. So it's a process.
In some instances, we'll get an offer of reduction for, to turn assessments, and it's not the way your tax bill reads, but to turn assessments into real dollars. If your tax bill says your home is being valued at $400,000, it's our job to prove that your home was worth less than $400,000 as per the sales in your neighborhood that are most similar to your home. So sometimes, for instance, we'll say your home is worth $350,000, and the assessor may not give us any offer of reduction. Sometimes we'll try to go for $350,000, then $360,000. Maybe they'll make us an offer of $370,000. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll call the homeowner and explain to them, this is the offer of reduction we have. We can chance going for a further reduction. We can chance filing an appeal, but then you could lose everything. So sometimes it's better to take some of the reduction and then file for more in a subsequent year. I also wanted to add that this SCAR, Small Claims Assessment Review, is a process that New York State controls. When you file that first 524 complaint with your Assessment Review Commission or Board of Assessors, it's called a formal complaint, and it's handled by your local taxing jurisdiction, your municipality, your assessor. When they deny you, and if they deny you, and you file an appeal, New York State charges a $30 filing fee. That's in order to get that SCAR number, which allows you to go into a courtroom. But basically what New York State is saying, listen, municipality, you didn't give the homeowner a fair shake, so we're taking over. We're going to take this grievance and we're going to put you into a court where you're going to sit with an assessor and a hearing officer or court-appointed representative, very often it's a retired judge, and we're going to present the evidence and listen to it one at a time to make sure that our homeowners get a fair shake.
You've mentioned assessments a few times, and anyone who owns a home on Long Island is familiar with the term and generally understands what an assessment is. It basically determines what our property is worth, right? But what goes into the assessment? How is that determined?
The assessment is usually determined at the time your home is built. That's the whole fault with the taxing system. If your home was built 30 years ago, and let's just say your building cost was $10,000, your assessment could have been set at $10,000, or it could have been set at $5,000 on a ratio of 50% of your home's value at the time. It gets very complicated.
Yeah.
So what happens as time goes forward, values change. For instance, way back, I can give many stories, but of a home on the water versus a home across the water, where the home on the water was $30,000 and the home off the water was $25,000. Move this forward 30 years, that home on the water is $700,000 or $800,000, and that home off the water is maybe $400,000. Where before there was only a $5,000 difference, now there could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in difference. But their assessments were never equalized or changed to reflect that change in value. That's one thing. So the assessment is made up usually of what your home cost to build at the time it was built, and then there are add-ons if you've done improvements. So your assessment would stay, in that example, at $5,000 forever. What changes is a ratio that turns that $5,000 into current day value. So let's just say it was times 10 ratio. That would mean your home is worth $500,000 years down the road. The ratio must stay the same for all homes within the same class of home within the same taxing jurisdiction. For instance, if you live in Nassau County, all of Nassau County shares one ratio. While in Suffolk County there are 10 townships, each township has a different ratio. And within the villages, whether you're in Nassau County, Suffolk County, Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, Orange, no matter what county or taxing jurisdiction you live in, you have a different ratio. So technically, someone who lives on one side of the street can have a completely different ratio and assessment than someone who lives on the other side of the street.
And take into consideration the people that filed along that course of time and the people that didn't file. So now it's really all over the place.
It's a moving target.
Is it possible that your property is correctly assessed, but your tax bill is still higher than it should be?
Well, everybody feels their taxes are higher than they should be.
Right.
But if your assessment is correct, there's almost never an instance where your taxes are higher than they should be, unless, of course, there's an error on your tax bill. We have seen a few errors on your tax bills. We've seen homes that are paying for, let's say, garbage or sewer incorrectly, where they may have it classed as a two-family home and it's a one-family home, but usually not. Those are errors that do happen, but they're rare.
And those errors can be found out during the grievance process, right?
Yes, those errors can be found out during the grievance process, and we're always happy to help a homeowner have them fixed. However, it's usually a situation that if a homeowner goes down to the assessor's office, they can straighten out themselves.
During our discussion this morning, you've mentioned the board a few times as we discussed the grievance process, but I'm curious to have you explain again, once we file a property tax grievance, where does it go and who reviews it exactly? Tell us about that.
Well, each community or each assessing office has a board of assessors, and that board, or in Nassau County, it's an assessment review commission, That's an independent board that's supposed to review all of these complaints from the homeowners. Unfortunately, they don't meet very often. In my opinion, very often, the board is not necessarily made up of people who have a great deal of real estate experience or even people who are extremely familiar with a particular community. So, for instance, when you put your complaint into the board, it goes into a big box, and then the board meets usually on grievance night, which in most areas is the third Tuesday of May. And when that board meets, they're supposed to review all the cases. But with 1,000 cases in the box and 500 people in the room, everyone wanting to present their case, it's not possible that they all get done. Categorically, most of them get denied. Then they send you a letter saying, I'm sorry, your grievance has been denied. You have 30 days to respond and file a complaint with New York State. That's the appeal level.
At which point we buy the SCAR number and present our case at the appeal level.
So at that point, how much longer before we can expect to hear a determination?
How old are you now?
The process can go from anywhere from a year to 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long process. And we do a lot of work. We try to stay in contact with our clients every 3 months and let them know what's happening. And hopefully, they continue to pay their taxes as normal, and hopefully we get them a reduction, which would result in a refund check. Especially in Suffolk County.
So if we win, we will get a refund?
In Nassau County, right now, we are negotiating these grievances at the ARC level, and we are able to have the tax bills corrected, which is a great thing, so people don't have to lay out that money. Some clients don't understand that their taxes still went up, even though they got a reduction. That's an increase in the tax rate. Suffolk County, however, it's a little bit longer, and usually half of our clients will get corrected tax bills, and the other half will pay their tax bills as normal and get a refund check. A lot of different scenarios that can happen along the 18 months.
Part of the reason it takes so long, there is a lot of paperwork that goes on both sides. When we file an appeal, there are up to 7 copies that need to be sent to all the different taxing jurisdictions involved in this grievance. For instance, the assessor gets one, the court gets one, the school district gets one, another copy goes to the court, the treasurer in the jurisdiction where you're filing gets one. So on a 4-page document, which is actually a 5-page document when we include our evidence for reduction, that's 7 copies times 5 pages. It's 35 different pages that need to go to 7 different places. And then it needs to wind through the courts until the court can actually organize them in a calendar. And the courts are extremely busy, and they're very cooperative, but they're very busy in scheduling these because there are thousands and thousands of grievances. In Nassau County, there's over 100,000 grievances filed every year. That's over 100,000. 90% of our clients, or more than 90% of our clients that file with us every year, get a reduction every year. In Suffolk County, there's not quite so many. I think there's about 30,000 filings per year, and many of those get reductions as well.
Are there deadlines to keep in mind for filing a property tax grievance?
Absolutely. Nassau County deadline is March 1st. And the Suffolk County deadline historically has been the 3rd Tuesday in May. That's at the board level.
I might want to add that you should always check with your local jurisdiction or call our office to understand there could be extensions to the deadlines and there are changes. There are also, people do get confused, and rightly so, between exemption deadlines, star filing deadlines, and your grievance deadline. There are different grievance deadlines for villages as well as for people who don't live in villages, and there are different deadlines for filing exemptions: star exemption, veterans exemption, senior citizen exemption, active combat veterans exemption. So there are many different exemptions as well, and those deadlines can vary from different communities.
As you mentioned earlier, filing a property tax grievance isn't necessarily a one-and-done thing. There are benefits to doing it every year, right? In
Nassau County, you really should do it every single year. You should not miss the opportunity to challenge your assessment ever.
I'm doing this 30 years. I've had people who have gotten at least 15 reductions over the 30-year period. And more importantly, especially, as Laurie said, in Nassau County, you need to file every single year. Until there's a reassessment or until you hear something else in the news that tells you not to file, you should file every year.
It's like going to the dentist, really. You have to do it every year.
If your grievance doesn't lead to an outcome that you're necessarily happy with, do you have any other recourse?
Well, the grievance part, if you're not happy with, you file the appeal. If the appeal part you're not happy with, you can file an appeal on the appeal. However, it's really not suggested. It's really expensive and it's also lengthy. I would just suggest that you file again the following year or make an appointment and go speak to your assessor.
You mentioned exemptions just a moment ago, the STAR exemption, veterans exemption, and so forth. Obviously, anyone who might be due one of those exemptions should find out about it and make sure they filed for it. Do you give your clients any other suggestions for saving money and reducing expenses on their homes?
Other than the exemptions, through the years, many of our clients have called us up and asked us for advice on their escrow accounts, asked us for advice on different things about their home and expenses. And just recently, we launched ZapMyInsurance, and we've been able to lower people's insurance premiums by understanding exactly what they need to be insured for. Unfortunately, like your assessment that gets set when you build the home, or when whoever built the home, and it can stay the same for 20 or 30 years, when you buy your home and you take an insurance policy, your insurance pretty much stays the same. Your insurance coverage stays the same, but your premium goes up a few percentages each year, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes more percent. But unfortunately, your insurance broker doesn't usually ask you all the things you need to know to get a lower premium. For instance, things that might change within your home, putting in an alarm system. Do you have smoke detectors? Have you put a new roof on your home? Has your boiler been serviced? What kind of heat do you have? Do you have a fireplace? All these things can add up. So without proper review, your insurance premiums will just go up and up and up. And we have found by finding the proper amount of insurance, making sure people aren't overinsured, making sure they're getting all the deductions that they deserve, we're able to lower people's homeowners insurance. Standard numbers are $500 to $1,000 on an annual premium. We were amazed. So far, we've written over 150 policies in just the last few months.
You have shared a lot of information with us on our show this morning, and I must tell you both that you're probably among the most organized people we've had on Island Outlook all this year and the best at math, I might add as well. You seem to be really good with the numbers in your head. What can we do if we'd like more information now about property tax?
Call our office.
You can call our office, 516-889-5500, or also in the same number in the 631-889-5500. You could visit our website at ZapMyTax.com or ZapMyInsurance.com. We have a wonderful customer service staff. Be willing to help you. And I'm also available for phone calls, and so is Laurie.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Terrific. Thank you both. You know, I did a lot of research before you came in, and I spoke to some of my neighbors, and we all had a lot of questions about how to go about grieving taxes. I found a lot of information as well on tax.ny.gov, so that's a place to go as well if people have questions and want to bring their questions to you. But again, your phone number, it's the same in both area codes, 631 or 516-889-5500. And that's ZapMyTax.com or ZapMyInsurance.com, right?
That's right.
Both.
And thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you being here, Peter Cohen and Laurie Fay from ZapMyTax and ZapMyInsurance. Thanks so much for sharing all that great information this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's Island Outlook for this week. If you have an idea for a topic for a future edition of our show, you can contact us at islandoutlook@connoisseurli.com. That's islandoutlook@connoisseurli.com. I'm Donna Vaughn on this station of Connoisseur Media, Long Island.